Death the Leveler by James Shirley. James Shirley is an English poet and dramatist, one of the leading playwrights of the 17th century. He is known as the last of the Elizabethans. Shirley was the most prolific and highly regarded dramatist during the reign of King Charles I, writing 31 plays, 3 masques, and 3 moral allegories. He is best remembered for his comedies of fashionable London life, including The Witty Fair One, Hyde Park, and The Lady of Pleasure. His best tragedies are The Traitor and The Cardinal. His elaborate masque, The Triumph of Peace, is performed at the Inns of Court with scenery. A masque was a form of amateur dramatic entertainment popular among the nobility in the 16th and 17th century England, which consisted of dancing and acting performed by masked players. He was certainly a highly talented writer, and the characters and situations that he generated for his stage plays owed much to the real people and events that had touched his own life. He invented his own versions of commonplace sayings. A good example of this was the expression, "Still waters run deep." His output of poetry was much less than that of his plays. James Shirley's Death the Leveler is a hauntingly philosophical poem about the dismal march of death that tramples down human pride and pomp. It presents a vividly personified picture of death as the ultimate conqueror in whose realm perfect equality prevails. It's a universal truth and a definite phenomenon that death is a great leveler. It comes to all and spares none. The mighty and the weak, the rich and the poor cannot escape the icy hands of death. Therefore, it is useless to boast of the glories of one's birth, caste, religion, and position. The only thing which remains after death are the just and noble deeds that we have done in our short life on earth. James Shirley portrays death and fate as omnipotent powers that overpower everyone. Holy Quran says, "Every soul shall taste death." Death comes as an uninvited guest, snatching us from all what we hold dear. The poem also can be considered as a dirge or a funeral song. Let's read the poem. The glories of our blood and state are shadows, not substantial. There's no armor against fate. Death lays his icy hand on kings. Scepter and crown must tumble down, and in the dust be equal made with the poor crooked scythe and spade. Some men with swords may reap the field, and plant fresh laurels where they kill. But their strong nerves at last must yield. They tame but one another still. Early or late they stoop to fate, and must give up their murmuring breath, when they, pale captives, creep to death. The garlands wither on your brow, then boast no more your mighty deeds. Upon death's purple also now, see where the victim bleeds. Your heads must come to the cold tomb. Only the actions of the just smell sweet and blossom in their dust. Now let's have a detailed analysis of the poem. The glories of our blood and state are shadows, not substantial things. There's no armor against fate. James Shirley begins the poem by talking about the vanity and impermanence of earthly glory and power. The poet reminds the reader of the futility of taking pride in one's birth and status. Life on earth is like a teardrop. It hangs down and after a while falls and loses content and shape. He says that the glories of our family lineage, that is blood, and the social state, as said in the poem, in which we take great pride, are like shadows which are not concrete. A shadow follows us only in the presence of light. Similarly, our social status and family heritage are significant only as long as we are alive. When death comes to embrace us, the social positions and family prestige do not accompany us. No armor offers protection from the merciless hands of death. We have to move according to the spin wheel of time and fate. Death is inevitable. Man is mortal, born of dust, and into this dust he must go. Shadows are a metaphorical representation of earthly glory. Death lays his icy hand on kings. Sceptre and crown must tumble down, and in the dust be equal made with the poor crooked scythe and spade. Death, the ultimate leveler, comes and lays his icy hands on kings and clowns alike. Death is personified as a merciless, unexpected invader who catches us off guard. The sceptre and the crown of the king fall down and lie equal in the dust with the poor peasant's scythe and spade. Death do not have any distinction between the mighty and the weak, high and the low, rich and the poor. Sceptre and crown stand for royal glory, splendor, and power of rulers. Scythe and spade are the tools of workers, and hence they stand for peasants. When death comes with his icy grip, both the king and the peasant have to succumb to their preordained fate. Death will give equal justice to the king who resides in his palace as well as to the poor peasant who leads a miserable life in his hut. This is the poetic justice brought forth by the supreme judge, death. Sceptre and crown, the symbols of monarchy, will be reduced to the state of scythe and spade, which symbolizes peasantry and hence are perfect instances of metonymy. Metonymy is a figure of speech in which a word is replaced by something very close to its original meaning. For example, we say suit to refer to businessmen. Some men with swords may reap the field and plant fresh laurels where they kill. Worldly victory and success too are futile before death. Some mighty warriors or powerful dictators would march into the battlefield with swords and reap a harvest of the people they kill. They hope to make great conquest through a bloody war or revolution. These victories and conquest are like the fresh laurels which adorn their heads. Plant fresh laurels mean that they exert their power over lands they conquered. Laurel is in fact a wreath worn on the head as a symbol of victory, like the laurel which adorns the head of the Greek god Apollo. But their strong nerves at last must yield. They tame but one another still. Early or late they stoop to fate, and must give up their murmuring breath when they, pale captives, crave to death. Regardless of the victories these mighty conquerors accumulate, one day they too will have to kneel before their fate. Gloating in their own false pride and glory, they fail to see the omnipotent death looming over their heads. But poor mortals still tame and kill one another like thoughtless beasts. They too will have to bow before death. They depart from this world as pale prisoners of death. Their strength and courage will vanish, and they will have to yield before the mighty fate. While some get tamed by fate early, others yield later. Even their valor cannot save them from the clutches of the inevitable death. These mighty conquerors who had dragged thousands to death can be seen as chained prisoners creeping through the corridors of death with a feeble murmur. There is no escape from the icy grip of death. Thus death again adorns the garb of a mighty judge, once again bestowing poetic justice. Here we are reminded of the renowned 18th century poet Thomas Gray's lines from his poem Elegy Written in a Country Church. Here goes the lines. The boast of heraldry, the pomp of power, and all that beauty, all that wealth ever gave, awaits alike the inevitable hour. The paths of glory lead but to the grave. The garlands wither on your brow, then boast no more your mighty deeds. Upon death's purple altar now, see where the victim bleeds. As death creeps in, the wreath of victory on your brow will lose its charm and gets withered, and the proclaimed victories will one day be forgotten. The honoring garlands on your dead body will dry off. then you have no right to boast of your mighty deeds. You have already succumbed to death. Now you are at the altar of death, where the victor as well as the victim, that is, the conqueror as well as the conquered, sheds blood or meets with the same fate. Even the mighty king who ventured into the battlefield with a sword and won many victories will soon become victim of death. Now he is a captive of death. One who emerged victorious has been victimized now. He'll be like an animal sacrificed on the altar of death. Bluish red blood will drip from his head. Victor victim is an oxymoron, as two words with opposite connotations are used together. An altar here is a deathbed where a dead body is kept for burial or sacrifice. Death's purple altar refers to the juncture in our lives when we come across death. It could even be a battlefield where a lot of blood is being shed. Purple color refers to the strewn blood at the spot of our death. Dried blood turns bluish or purple. The purple color of the blood or death is transferred to the altar. So the figure of speech used here in death's purple altar is transferred epithet. Transferred epithet is an adjective usually used to refer to describe one thing, and it has been transferred to another. Your heads must come to the cold tomb. Only the actions of the just smell sweet and blossom in their dust. However great you are, you will have to embrace a cold tomb one day. After death, your bodies will be kept in icy cold tombs. Your dear ones will bid farewell to you by strewing sand on your tomb, and you will be left alone. Your lone companion would be the good actions done by you in your short life on earth. You will be remembered with love for all the good deeds done by you. It means that only the good actions of the righteous people will bloom on the grave with its fragrance wafting in the air long after they are gone. Only the just actions of the righteous people will be remembered by posterity. So our aim should be to lead an exemplary life, inspiring others. A good name and legacy will live through our future generation. The poem ends on an optimistic note. We remember and revere people like Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Abraham Lincoln, Mother Teresa, and Nelson Mandela for their humanitarian deeds and contributions. The notorious names like Napoleon Bonaparte, General Dyer, Adolf Hitler, Osama bin Laden are loathed by all alike for the heinous crimes they have committed. Now let's have a look at the poetic devices. Rhyme scheme. Each of the three stanzas in Death the Leveler follows the same rhyme scheme, AB, AB, CC, DD. In order to beautify its versification, the poet has used figures of speech like personification, metaphor, metonymy, and oxymoron. Death is being personified as an all-powerful force. Earthly glories are metaphorically called as shadows, and good deeds are referred as flowers. Victor-victim is a beautiful instance of oxymoron. Scepter and crown, scythe and spade are instances of metonymy, as they stand for royalty and peasantry, respectively. Death's purple altar is a perfect example of transferred epithet. Death the Leveler by James Shirley is a poem on the power of good deeds to survive the stranglehold of death. This poem teaches us to think carefully before we take decision and analyze the consequences of our actions, as death is looming over us and our life can be snatched away from us at any moment. We should not boast about our so-called mighty deeds. It's our choice to do good or bad. If we lead a good life inspiring others, our name will be engraved in gold in the hearts of people. But if we lead a notorious life, even death cannot wipe off the stain from our names. The poem was written by James Shirley around the time of English Civil War. King Charles I was murdered in 1649, putting an end to monarchy, and the Puritan government headed by Oliver Cromwell came to power. This poem makes a reference to victors of a battle who are eventually reduced to the level of defeated force. The poem also makes reference to the death of a king. This poem was printed at the time of the parliamentary victory of Oliver Cromwell and the execution of King Charles I. Undoubtedly, such drastic events traumatized writers like Shirley, who had sympathized with the monarch. The poem also has similar overtones with another poem titled Ozymandias by P.B. Shelley. It was written around the time when Napoleon was at the peak of his power. The poem could be seen as a warning to Napoleon that eventually all his glory will end as a mighty leveler, death comes. Thank you.